In 476 AD, one of history's greatest empires ceased to exist. Historians blamed the barbarians, the generals, the corruption. But the real weapon that brought Rome to its knees was something far more familiar. It was money. The same tool that built the empire would become the instrument of its destruction. This is the story of how the greatest financial experiment in ancient history went catastrophically wrong, and why its lessons are more relevant today than ever. The story begins not with swords, but with silver. At its height, Rome was the richest civilization the world had ever seen. At its peak, the empire held 130 million people, across 1.5 million square miles. Rome built 50,000 miles of roads connecting its empire. Merchants moved freely. Trade flourished. The economy hummed. But powering all of this, the armies, the roads, the bread for the masses, required one thing above all else: money. Rome's currency, the denarius, was the backbone of the entire economy. Struck from nearly pure silver, 90% or more, it was trusted across the known world. A soldier could feed his family with a week's pay. A farmer could plan years ahead. The denarius was not just a coin, it was a promise. And that promise was backed by conquest. Every war Rome won brought gold, silver, and slaves back to the treasury. As long as the empire expanded, the money kept flowing. But empires cannot expand forever. By the 1st century AD, Rome's expansion began to slow. The easy conquests were done. The gold from new territories dried up. But the bills? The bills kept coming. The army needed paying. The poor needed feeding. The emperors needed their palaces. Rome faced a problem every government fears: spending more than it earns. And the solution they chose would set in motion a chain of events that would take centuries to fully unravel. The answer was debasement. Instead of finding new silver, they simply used less of it. A denarius that was once 90% pure silver was quietly, gradually reduced. Under Nero in 64 AD, it dropped to 90%. Under Marcus Aurelius, 75%. The process had begun. At first, no one noticed. The coins still looked like silver. They still felt like silver. But they weren't. Merchants are not fools. Slowly, they began to notice. The coins felt lighter. The shine was different. Then came Caracalla. In 215 AD, he introduced a new coin, the Antoninianus, officially worth 2 denarii, but containing only 1.6 times the silver. It was, essentially, legalized fraud. Caracalla also raised soldiers' pay by 50%. His words were recorded for history. Nobody should have any money but I, so that I may bestow it upon the soldiers. He wasn't hiding what he was doing. What followed was the crisis of the 3rd century. Between 235 and 284 AD, 26 different emperors rose and fell. Most through military coups, each one desperate for money, each one debasing the coins. Further, by 265 AD, just 200 years after the denarius was 90% silver, it was down to 0.5%. The coin that had built the greatest empire in history was now little more than a bronze disc with a thin silver wash. Think about what that means. A coin that was once nearly pure silver had lost 99.5% of its precious metal content. The promise had been broken, and the market responded accordingly. Prices didn't just rise, they exploded. By 265 AD, prices across the Roman Empire had increased by 1,000%. The government's response? Tax more. When the money is worth less, collect more of it. Farmers who once paid a fraction of their harvest now surrendered most of it. Many simply abandoned their land. Why farm if everything you grow is taken? The agricultural backbone of the empire began to collapse. The army, Rome's greatest strength, began to lose faith. Soldiers demanded their pay in gold because debased silver coins could barely buy bread. Rome began hiring barbarian mercenaries and paying them in the gold it refused to give its own citizens. The empire's defenders were now men who had no loyalty to Rome. In much of the empire, people stopped using coins altogether. They returned to barter, a loaf of bread for a jar of oil, a day's labor for a sack of grain. 2,000 years of monetary progress reversed. By 284 AD, Emperor Diocletian came to power and surveyed the wreckage. He tried something desperate, a price freeze. In 301 AD, Diocletian issued the Edict on Maximum Prices, setting legal price ceilings on over 1,400 goods and services: bread, wine, wages, even haircuts. The result was predictable to anyone who understands economics. Merchants hid their goods, black markets flourished, shortages worsened. The edict failed and was quietly abandoned. Contemporary historian Lactantius wrote that after the edict, men were afraid to expose anything to sale, and the scarcity became much more grievous than before. Wealth concentrated in land. Large landowners became increasingly powerful. Small farmers and urban workers lost all economic independence. The middle class was being wiped out. As the economy fragmented, so did political authority. Provincial governors began acting independently. The central government lost control over vast territories, and outside the borders, the barbarians watched. They had always been there. But now, for the first time, Rome looked weak. Long before the last emperor was deposed in 476 AD, the Roman economy had already collapsed. The military conquest came later. The financial collapse came first. In 476 AD, a barbarian chieftain named Odoacer walked into what remained of the Roman court and told the boy Emperor Romulus Augustulus to go home. It wasn't even a battle. There was nothing left to fight for. Sound familiar? Before you say, that was ancient history, let's talk about what's happening right now. Rome debased its coins by reducing silver content. Modern governments print money digitally. The mechanism is different. The effect is identical. Rome's silver content went from 90% to 0.5% over 200 years. The US dollar has lost over 96% of its purchasing power since 1913. Different timescales, same story. When Rome debased its currency, the first people to feel it were ordinary citizens, not the wealthy. They held gold and land. The people who held coins, workers, soldiers, farmers. History has a way of protecting the wealthy during monetary crises. Land holds value. Gold holds value. It's always the middle class that gets hollowed out. Constantine eventually stabilized the empire with a new gold coin, the solidus, which remained remarkably stable for 700 years. Proof that monetary reform is possible, but it required political will and genuine backing. And here's the fascinating footnote. The Eastern Roman Empire, Byzantium, survived for another 1,000 years. Why? Because it maintained monetary discipline. The solidus held its value. The empire held together. Money is not just metal. It's not just paper. Money is trust. The moment people stop trusting a currency, really stop trusting it, no army, no emperor, no government can force them to believe again. Rome's ruins still stand. Tourists walk among them every day. But what fell first, before the columns, before the armies, before the emperors, was the currency. Rome did not fall in a single moment. It unraveled slowly through the destruction of its monetary system. And the lesson it left behind is written, not in stone, but in every currency that has ever failed. The names change. The mistakes don't. So here's the question I want to leave you with. If the most powerful empire in human history could be brought down by monetary mismanagement, what does that tell us about the world we live in today? History doesn't repeat itself exactly, but it rhymes. And the rhythm of Rome's monetary collapse has been echoing through civilizations for 2,000 years. In future videos, we'll look at how the same patterns played out in the Byzantine Empire, in Weimar Germany, in 1920s Austria, and what all of them have in common. If you found this story fascinating, subscribe. Every week, we uncover the financial forces that shaped history, the crashes, the frauds, the manias, and the few who saw it coming. Because understanding the past might just be the best investment you ever make.